Hello, everyone. I am Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspire podcast, and my guest today is a renowned Kimba Arem. Kimba is an international recording artist and engineer, molecular biologist, classically trained musician since age 7, and professional performer, subtle energy and music therapist, and a full-time spiritual seeker. While attending graduate school studying Taoist Chinese acupuncture and herbs, she was introduced to the ancient idea of using sound as medicine. Kimba has actively studied and been involved in shamanic practices from around the world since 1992. She is the president of Radiance Health, an integral health clinic in Colorado she co-founded. She also composes and engineers music for film, produces CDs, teaches workshops, and holds private sound therapy sessions. Kimba is a co-producer and creator of musical score for the movie Secret of Water. Her other achievements are too many to mention here, so I encourage you to go and visit her website. Kimba, thank you very much for joining me today.
It's an honor to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
I would like to start with your latest achievement, which is the launch of the 10 series episodes on Gaia called Sound of Creation. So let's unpack this project. What made you think about such project? How long it took to finish it? And did you travel to any special location?
Oh, well, that's a really vast topic. It is really it's one of those things that if you follow spirit, which is what my near death experience uh, taught me how to do or forced me to learn, is the mind has ideas when you're young of what you're going to do with your life, and as you grow up you have various influences that affect the choice of your direction. And I had this wake up call that showed me I was not going in the direction that really was my higher purpose or my dharma, my heart, my soul calling, whatever you want to name that. It's something we incarnated, that we chose to do before we came into this plane of existence. And so that was like a corrective shock of getting me in the right direction. But I did not know really now. And if I'm not going to medical school and I'm just about to graduate with all this preparation, what now? And so I got on this path of just like myself to receive higher guidance, because that's what this experience opened me to be able to do. And so since that time in 1992, it's been a very long and winding road. As the Beatles say, it's a meandering path, because the mind has an idea, but the heart has a plan. Your gut knows something else, and then there's your higher self, or your angels and your guides that work with you. And so I would say Sound of Creation, this recent project, is kind of like a flowering of all of these years of putting together. I call it following the breadcrumbs of spirit, guiding here and there and meet these people and end up here. And it's complex to describe all the pieces that went into it, because like all of us, our life is just there's so many things that happened in a day, in a year, in a month, in a lifetime. And so to me, this project, just it was very organic how um this was the time for it to be birthed. And the position I'm in my partnership, where I live, the people that I'm connected to at this point, they it all just it almost was kind of magical. It all the pieces just fell into place. And so I've been working with Gaia because of, for many years. I've been with them from the beginning of their inception. And they hadn't really done a series on sound, and there's so much interest growing every year in people's interest in sound. And I believe this is going to only increase as we go into the new age. We are in the age of Aquarius, according to the astrologers, and it's just a totally different frequency. And it's also very much more, I think, aligned with the understanding of vibration and subtle energies as being fundamental to creation, to like where energy first, matter second, as above, so below. And so when you start working with sound, you are actually working with the matrix underlying creation, the original formative matrix, sound, subtle energies, including consciousness is a vibration. Um, our our words, of course, can carry power if we use them with intention and coherence. I have a whole thing on the power of the word and how we might be um, misusing that power and or giving away that power by not infusing the language that we use when we communicate with in integrity, coherence, and alignment with what we're thinking, with what's the highest good for all. And then we can use the power of the word to create. That's how all the religions, all the spiritual traditions say the world was created through the word, through the sound, through the primordial vibration underlying all things. And we have the potential as humans to step into that power. So that's a very long answer to your question, but that's kind of the meta um, intention underlying sound of creation is what, you know, my heart's calling, my path as a musician, but also all the different aspects of sharing sound that I've been including language, you know, the voice and communication. And I'm a Gemini, right? So that's part imprint. But that's what I would like to see brought back into the consciousness of the collective, how powerful we are as creators, how sometimes less is more. Sometimes the subtle frequencies of sound can have much more of an impact than a lot of other methodologies we're using to affect change or to create in our reality.
Yes, it is a fascinating subject, sound with along with water. And you mentioned that we give away our power through words, and to extrapolate that to the material world and the all outside the spiritual environment is when we talk to like official language. We don't know exactly the words we have to use to interact with, let's say, government or with other type of officials. And if you go into the root of these words, you will understand that you are indeed giving away all your power to others, and you are under their jurisdiction by using improper words.
Right. And that's also coming more into the awareness of the collective of, you know, what it means to have a social security number or to be, you know, owned by a corporation. You know, it's all in the fine print. And but the way I see this as is we are leaving an age. The age of Pisces was very much structured vibrationally and in the teaching of that time period, that 5,000 some odd period of time. And now we're in the age of Aquarius, totally different frequency, totally different collective lessons. But the age of Pisces was very much structured, kind of like the pyramid. You know, there's the few at the top that rule the many, or the doctor, the minister, the priest, the governor, the king, queen, the president. You know, it's that was the Piscean era structure, I guess you could say. And it was perfect, you know, even though it was messy. You know, this life on earth is probably always going to be messy because we're living in these bodies that are decaying, you know, from the time of our birth. It's just a challenging realm of impermanence, you know, as the Buddha taught. But the new era of the age of Aquarius isn't structured like that. And so what's happening, the image I get as a frequency person, everything I think is and I feel is in patterns, like fractals, like the way sound, you know, creates. If you're familiar with cymatics, I wish we could show some images, but there's cymatics is this this science of showing how vibration underlies matter. And Hans Jenny and other researchers, Peter Manners, and other people in the field have, and we talk about this in the Sound of Creation a lot series, but you take a metal plate and you put sand on it or some other vibrating medium, and you put a frequency generator to create vibrations, and you'll see these patterns, very geometric, complex. You change the frequency, goes into a new pattern, or sometimes it'll look like life forms, like little mollusks or starfish, or depending on the frequency, you'll get a different form. So it's a very simple model showing that frequency is underlying all of matter, and even cell division. They're showing how when one cell becomes two, the basis of molecular life is a frequency shift. And so what I think about, I keep getting these images inside of like what the Piscean era frequency or vibration looked like, in a way, in the pattern of that era. And then the shifting we're in cymatics, when you change the frequency, the pattern goes into like chaos. There's no pattern for a little while, short while. It's almost like when you change the station on a radio, and you're on a station, it's broadcasting, you're getting information or music, then you change the station and there's static. And then you keep changing the knob, if in the old time radios, for those of us who grew up with those, and then you the new station and there's a whole new set of information there. And it's just flowing through, you're just picking it up through the radio. It's in the space. But I see that as our solar system goes around the great cycle around the center of the Milky Way, our galaxy, we're going through different vibrational sectors of space, and that was mapped out as different ages. Or like, we're in the Aquarian age now. It's a totally different vibration. So when you change patterns, you change frequencies, there's this chaos period. It looks like chaos, but really it's just a reorganization. And then all of a sudden, boom, the new pattern reveals itself. It's usually more complex if you're going up in frequency. And I feel we've been in this kind of breakdown to breakthrough era. And that's what the astrologers are saying. We're in this major shift of the ages. It was prophesied by the Mayans, the Hopis, all these other long-standing spiritual lineages that map time. And so as we enter the Aquarian age, it's like the sand particles on the cymatic pattern, they're all the same particles, they just change their position. It's almost like when you go from winter into spring, which we're probably going like from the Kali Yuga, the winter, into the spring of the new era on the Vedic, they map these long cycles. It's like, the compost of that old cycle becomes the new
fertilizer.
cycle.
Yeah.
Right. It breaks down. And so what I see is we're going through a breakdown systems, all of them, for education, government, money system, healthcare system. Was like, oh my God, really needed breakdown, compost, transform, and new ones are already emerging. They have been for some time, but it's really accelerating. We also need to see the breakdown of the way we exchange information, because there's so much censoring, and it's like that old system of controlling information is being transformed. There's new media channels, new ways of communicating. The Aquarian age is a lot about communication. It's like an air sign also, but it's also very much we the people, the collective mind, and technology. And I think we can go in different timelines for where technology goes. And I think symbiosis with the silicon life rather than the AI, and we all kind of go in a trajectory of a spiritual dead end or something. I don't know what that future's like, that timeline, but I just see that we're in this vibrational shift, and the new era of the age of Aquarius is us, we the people, collective consciousness, creating the world of our dreams, of our highest visions. And we absolutely have the power to do that. The very few at the top of the pyramid of that old system, they're totally losing the ability to control in the way they had, because we're in a new vibrational era that doesn't support the old model, the top-down system of the Piscean era. It's gone, and they're just scrambling because that's all they know. And so then we, the people, are like, oh my God, it's what do we do? And it's like, this is what we do. We wake up, we help each other wake up, and we lift the vibration through our hearts, through love, through all the our personal passion, finding why you incarnated, which was what happened to me with the corrective shock of the wake up call I got. But you don't have to have a near death experience to get back on track. There's a lot of other ways to really find your particular frequency, vibration, the note that you came to play in the symphony of creation that only you can play. And your job is to just play your note perfectly. And then we have the symphony of humanity, the symphony of the cosmos, all of us just creating a beautiful world.
Yes, beautiful. And I agree that the elites are panicking right now. They are in total disarray, and they are desperate to maintain their position. It's quite visible. There is no more hiding anymore. And of course, there are many of us which still don't agree or want to acknowledge what's going on. But I think that we might end up with a new pattern that will look like an inverse pyramid, and that will be we the people on the top and the very few at the bottom, and that will be great.
Or another image I get is, there's the pyramid, and then the mirror of the pyramid is like a diamond. And then also that if you take that pyramid and you like kind of cross them over, you've got, the Merkaba, which is, the heart center, the structure of water. It's the vector equilibrium, the most stable structure that is in every, particle of space, if you could call it particles. It's the central geometry that's that underlying everything. The center of that is black holes, white holes. It's what creates. And so I think the new age might have more of a balance where, there's the as above, so below. That's the teaching of Hermes and that whole lineage of the Hermetic Thoth, that idea that the higher worlds are mirrored here on heaven as it is on earth, like the original Lord's Prayer that's being remembered in its original form before it kind of lost a lot of meaning through various translations. It all talks about that. The coming of the new earth is happening. It's through us. It's through love. It's through us building that and remembering that we have the power to visualize and create and manifest as creators. And I always also thought, I've thought a lot about, I'm not an astrologer, but I love astrology because I see it as a vibrational science. It's which everything is on some level. If you go to the depths, it's all vibration. But the planets, the harmony of the spheres, and just our local solar system, they're all vibrationally emanating imprints that structure our reality, structure us at birth, structure our world, structure our the cycles of time. And there's a science to it. That's what's part of the Hermetic teaching. And I think it's our time to kind of re-embrace all of these teachings of how to manifest heaven on earth, and do it for us to step into our power and to remember that there's really no us and them. Only in the lower level of consciousness of duality is there anyone but us. I think even, as a molecular biologist, when I had my near-death awakening, I kind of looked at the world as like the Gaia hypothesis shows that, the planet is like a fractal of the body, and that we are like a microcosm of the earth. And I saw all this, and then I saw that other people had seen this and made it into a science. It was an ancient science and now being revised. And that means that everything has its place, including like viruses. You think of a virus as, something that tries to kill you, or just make you sick. And but in the cosmic scheme of Brahma is the universal scale of the creation, that we're all cells in the body of the creator on a fractal level. On the local level, a virus is here to challenge the system, to make it more complex, to develop new abilities. For example, in the human body, the immune system gets developed through getting viruses. That's why vaccinations are not ideal for the body when you're growing up, because your body's meant to learn to become more intelligent through the challenge of the virus. And so as I kind of looked at the planet from this very expanded scale, and it's continued since that time of my near death awakening, I saw that, what's going on our planet, the beings that are here, which are likely not from Earth, they're like a virus of the cosmos, or, they came to Earth probably about 5,000 years ago. It's hard to put a timeline on it, but, making the planet sick. But even they have a purpose. Like on a local level, it's to make us more intelligent and resilient as a species, and maybe push us to the next level of our evolution. Because without the challenge, sometimes we get complacent. Humans, and you can't, because human lives are not long enough for us to get complacent. We will die and then remember in the after death state, oh, that's right, I was here to spiritually evolve, and maybe even in this lifetime attain self-realization. But we have an infinite number of chances to come back and try to remember. But when we have these challenges, it stimulates us to remember that, okay, we got to work on this, because it's not easy. And I think the challenge we're facing right now is doing that for people. It's absolutely a perfect, it's like the hero's journey. You have to overcome the dragon, the lizard, the beings that want to kill you, because if they weren't there, we would probably just keep reincarnating and forgetting and just having fun on Earth, but not really going anywhere. And so there's really no us and them when your consciousness goes to the higher levels or the more expanded levels. I don't know if there's a hierarchy to it. It's more like when you expand your consciousness, however it is, through a psychedelic, through a near-death experience, through deep meditation, you see that it's all nested fractal cycles of the same repeating pattern of the one creator that we are. And that to me is the essence of the Hermetic teaching, as above, so below. And that lineage that I feel I'm a part of, and here to be one of the voices to remind us, to help us remember that, everything is vibration. Everything is the creator. And we could say the sound of the creation, that's the name of the series, because underneath the sound of creation, in the Vedic, they call it the Aum or the Om. And basically it's a frequency. And you can learn to perceive this. And we do talk about that in one of the later on in the series, around episode 9 and 10, about the very, very deep esoteric lineages that were not talked about in the ancient times until you got deeper into whatever esoteric lineage you were a part of. All of them, if you go deep, have this teaching of how to start to perceive the sound current or the nod or the shabd, or there's different names for it in different cultures. And that is the matrix that we can tap into for our spiritual evolution.
Yes, and I like your comparison with us becoming complacent. It's like, working on a job for 20 years, you don't know anything else to do but that particular task, and you are not willing to learn. You kind of lost or diminish your capacity of learning new skills. And what we are going through as the species, I think it's a shock. It's a wake up call for us, for some of us at least, to go out there, improve ourselves physically, spiritually, become have a better mind and soul capacity of learning and opening up, and that's very important. And I have to admit, I am just half through the series, but in episode 3, I encountered this Arab proverb: "You can't look away from the face of God, just because God is everywhere." And I think that if we consciously assimilate this statement, what you just said about, consciousness, expanding consciousness, understanding that there is no separation, it will come much easier to us and evolve in multitude of angles.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I feel that are you familiar with the Kabbalah tree?
Yes.
That so that's the image of the Sephirot. It's like the tree with all the different levels going back to the one. That's this kind of the Kabbalah is is associated with the Hebrew tradition, but it's actually much more ancient than that. And but it's kind of like a multidimensional map, and they're like, you are here is kind of on the map in the earth plane is called Malkuth, which is basically uh the bottom of the tree. So you had a map of the universe and it said you are here, and you see all these different levels. We're right at the bottom. And it was a bottom. Like I said, there's only up and down in the 3D language where there's time and space. And now, the new physics is saying, well, time and space are actually one dimension and they're actually two sides of the same coin. So you can't, and space time and time space might, like, when you die, you go to time space, and we're in space time. And so there's a whole lot of stuff happening in physics, but the language of the the model of where we are is pretty humbling. And I kind of think about it as like spiritual kindergarten. And the goal, just like any school system, is to keep going. You go from kindergarten, go to first grade. Well, we have school systems, the universe has school systems. It's like it's all just one learning. We're all here to just learn. And I think when you start to understand kind of the rules of, or the curriculum of the plane you're in, then you get to graduate. Doesn't mean you necessarily stop existing. I think at some point we merge back into the one, and we don't come back into any kind of form, even as an angel or an archangel or the archai or all the levels. We, here we are in a human, but there's so many other levels. But one thing I think is possible that we're facing as humanity is this time of potential graduation for souls that maybe we went all the way around the great year. And as I was mentioning with astrology, is like all of the different astrological signs, which are just different vibrational imprints of a time of the 25,950 year cycle of our solar system and our planets circle around the center of the galaxy. That's a great year. And as it goes through the great year, we have 12 sectors that we call ages, that are the zodiac, the signs of the zodiac. But it's all the way, you go all the way around till you get to Aquarius, where we are now, and it's a human form. And all of the other signs are animals, except, Gemini can be portrayed as twins or the pillars. So that's one exception, is the Gemini, which is the Hermes, or the Thoth lineage of, he's Mercury, rules Gemini. But aside from that sign, I thought, well, maybe it's like the Mayans were tracking these huge cycles. Everyone's talking about 2012, but it's really, they never said it would be on that date. It was more like a due date, like the Zolk in the center of the Mayan calendar. And time is a frequency. It's all vibrational, waves of time and space. Moving through space creates time. And the center of their calendar, the Zolk, is based on the 9-month cycle, which is a birthing cycle. And 9 is this recurring number in music, in tuning. So we talk about the 432 tuning, which is has all these nines related, all these ancient sites, and time itself and free energy and cycles, right? So 9. So when we get to the time we're in, that the Mayans were calculating probably like a due date, like maybe this is my interpretation, is like a birth time, a birth of a species to its next octave of its evolution. I think we might be in the birth canal right now we might have gone all the way around incarnating for a group of us, like a lot of us. Maybe it's not everyone on the planet. There do seem to be like some young souls on the planet that are newbies. Like I don't relate to a number of the humans on the planet, but it's not hierarchy. It's just young tree, little tree. We're all in the forest here. But if there's some of us that have been around a while and now we're at a time where we enter the birth canal because we're entering the age of Aquarius, and it's about we the people, a collective mind. Going back to the Kabbalah tree, it's like we might have the opportunity to go up a rung, like go through the center. The center of the Kabbalah tree is like the Shushumna, and that was part of the Hermes lineage teaching, to my understanding, of the Caduceus. He's holding this staff. It's the teaching of how to use your Kundalini and your energy to raise your consciousness to the crown, so you can have these transcendental experiences and maybe even attain self-realization, which to me is about we go up the ladder, whether it's as an individual or a collective. So the vision I hold is, because the age of Aquarius, and there's a lot of us that are maybe on the edge, like we want some new lessons. I'm tired of flunking kindergarten. That's all I have to say. And if that means we can help each other, we the people help each other by connecting our collective mind, you have to make your ego thin enough to do that. Doesn't mean you lose identity. The way bees are, the way ants are, the way schools of fish, schools of birds, they all have personalities and identities if you get to know them. But they also operate like the mind of Gaia, the planet, is very symbiotic. And I think it's waiting for us as a species as humans, to enter into that collective symbiotic frequency, kind of like in the movie Avatar. If you ever saw that movie, that's like the turning point of that planet Pandora, which is like Earth. We virus like they did, it was the humans coming to take and exploit. And they did this, something happened, and they became symbiotic on a new level with the life of that planet. And I feel that that's a really good model for us at this time, that the beings that are here, it's time for them to go. And it's time for us to evolve. It's called like Childhood's End. I don't know if you ever heard of this book by Arthur C. Clarke. I did not like the miniseries they did on it. They distorted the message greatly. But the book was incredible. And I think it was very prophetic. Even just the title, Childhood's End, of, the birth of a new era of a species on a planet, and the extraterrestrial beings that have been involved in kind of instigating that. I think it's a very organic process. I still feel the matrix of matter, mother matrix, this word is it's very feminine. It's not female, it's feminine, like the Pistis Sophia story or the Persephone. That's each of our soul coming down into the world of the underworld. This is the underworld. It's not after you die. This is it, according to the ancients. Getting the lessons, or Alice in Wonderland, down the rabbit hole, right? Yeah. And we are in the upside down world, right? And then our work is to return, like the hero's journey, in the belly of the whale, go down into the underworld, then return as the king, the queen, the hero. That is the template of our journey on the earth plane, I think, individually and collectively.
Yes, and I agree that we have to integrate our energy, or balance and reassess our energy and our capabilities with the energy of the earth. Otherwise, being out of sync is not the way to go forward. And as you said, Earth is going through the changes right now, energy changes, weaker electromagnetic field, and that affects us regardless if we want or not. I don't know if we can protect ourselves in any way. We have to adjust. We have to go with the flow of Mother Earth. So some of us will do that, will agree to accept such transformation. Others will not. So we'll see what the result will be.
And you know, uh, when I started to study the pineal gland, which is associated with the ajna or the third eye and the crown chakra. Well, there's a pituitary. There's this whole thing going on with the higher centers when we raise our kundalini and we start to open our consciousness to the higher realms. Um, that inside the pineal gland are these little magnetic um, elements that if the pineal gland is not calcified, which unfortunately a lot of people have calcification or growth of these crystals because a lot of it's because of the fluoride in the water, which is a rat poison, doesn't help with teeth. There's no evidence showing that fluoride is anything but toxic, does not help with tooth enamel. But it's in our water supply and it's calcifying people's pineal gland, which sound can help. There's methods to help get those little magnetic crystals moving again. But what I think is interesting about that is in birds, they also, all animals have a pineal gland. Amphibians, birds have it. They also have these magnetic elements. And when they're flying across, like some migrate across, thousands of miles, and they're using their pineal gland to navigate because basically those little magnetic crystals are aligning with the magnetic field of the earth, and that helps them to know where they're going on this totally subconscious intuitive level. But we also have that too. But what's interesting that I've thought about often is my personal theory, but since I had this near death experience and I've looked a lot into what happens when we die. So when your heart stops, your heart is in involved in creating your personal magnetic field. And when your heart stops beating, your magnetic field drops. Same with the earth. Right now, we're going through the magnetic field hasn't dropped because apparently it can do that right before it reverses itself. And who knows what will happen then, or it's happened before. It's documented in the magnetic flows of lava over time. So we're going through changes in the magnetic field. But what happens when when your heart stops beating, your magnetic field drops, and those little crystals in your pineal gland are not orienting anymore because that's what your field is doing, because they're magnetic and your field is partly magnetic. And so, and like I said, this is, I don't know if anybody's researched this, but we do know that when you die, when you're dying, uh, your pineal gland releases DMT, which is a potent psychedelic that you can take externally, but we endogenously make DMT. And so what happens is you get a flood of it. And I think DMT is the guy Rick Strausman wrote a book called DMT, the Spirit Molecule, and it's very fascinating research on it. But it's basically like that molecule opens a doorway. The vibration of whatever that geometry of that molecule is opening the doorway to the higher realms. And I've often thought about what would happen on Earth to the collective consciousness if our planet, which we're all, our heartbeat is in training with the Schumann resonance, within training to the planetary, everything's connected. We're all part of the one life of the Gaian supermind. Whether we're conscious of it or symbiotic with it is another thing. But if that field were to drop, like a death, like when we die, it's possible that we could have some kind of collective DMT experience, because it's theorized that the magnetic field of the earth has an impact on, that the pineal gland, because we're aligning with it. And so I know the birds are already showing signs at different times of having trouble navigating and stuff. And so that is theorized that it's in related to the shifting of the magnetic field. But I've kind of had a hope that what if everybody on the planet were to just have a collective psychedelic experience, just spontaneously all at once. It could shift us into a new octave of consciousness, but in a way that's like wishful thinking, like, the aliens come save us, like, what are we going to do with the mess we're in, and but it's not out of the realm of possibility that all the shifts that are happening on the planet are part of what's preparing us for a mass global awakening of some sort of frequency shift. We do talk about in the Sound of Creation. There are a number of cultures that have just simply disappeared, and they were very advanced, like the creators of Stonehenge and different Mayan civilizations. They, got to a certain level, and they were advanced spiritually, but they also built these massive megaliths that we can't even replicate today. So they had technology as well. It's just looked different from ours. I mean, we can't even begin to replicate some of the uh, stuff our ancient ancestors were doing, supposedly with pulleys and ropes, which is proven to be completely impossible. Cannot build a Great Pyramid, even with all the technology that we have today and many other megalithic sites like this. Mm-hmm. So why did they just disappear? And it's possible that they reach a certain level, a certain vibrational level of their society, their collective, and they frequency shift, like tuning stations on a radio, and they become imperceptible to us because we're still on the same station here. All of us on Earth are at a certain frequency level, the consciousness. But it's possible that we could, as a species, go through a frequency shift. And that might be what people are talking about, the timeline bifurcation that we could be experiencing, that has been talked about by Damenher and many others. Even the Hopis had prophecies about what we're calling timeline bifurcation, which is, bifurcation. The fractal bifurcation is how everything operates. Lineages of animals multiplying. It's all one becomes two, and then each of those branches go this way. And time can apparently do that. So it's like there's people that want AI. They want to upload themselves into a virtual reality. And then there's the people who want this reality of the many worlds that we've shown in quantum physics exist. That is a higher octave of Earth, where we operate symbiotically with each other, with nature, with animals, with plants, and we are loving it. We're in love. We're sharing resources in a way. We have free energy, and all the technology we know exists, but has not been allowed to flourish yet. But on this other timeline, that's possible. And if we go that way, we could just simply disappear from this other timeline, and they would likewise disappear from us because they're choosing that other reality. And it's all based on frequency. It's not based on judgment or good or bad. It's based on free will choice. We live on a free will planet, and that's the ultimate free will, is consciousness, the vibration of how we choose to think and act, and the integrity of what we do, and therefore what we create. And that's what I'm looking for, is to network more and more with people who are building, and it's already happening. It's kind of organic, but it's also, we have to do it. We have to be conscious of what we're doing and choose this new Earth and just let it be. Don't resist the other timeline. Let people make their choices, but not buy into it nor judge it, because that's a lower frequency vibration. On the Kabbalah tree, we're in a place where there's light and there's dark, and there's the battery. The yin and yang is the physics of Malkut, the earth plane. But on the higher planes, it's like the Tao is the middle. It's the way of water is the middle way between judging right or good, left or right, good or bad. It's neither. It's both. It's like space and time. They're one dimension. So with the 3 and 4 dimensions are one, but then there's the higher. We go to the 5th from here or something, and there's whole different set of teaching. We're not in kindergarten anymore, but we are like babies in a way in a new world. And I'm personally really looking forward to some new lessons, besides like, okay, I don't want to play the game of Republican, Democrat, who's going to vote for who, competition and all the stuff that has ruled us for so many thousands of years. It's just boring. There's no learning left in that for a number of us. The learning is, okay, how do we move to the higher plane so we can move on with our spiritual evolution and keep evolving.
Yes, and talking about a collective ascension or awakening. Several years ago, I wrote my first book, and it was all about this. What will happen if God will call all the souls back? How he will do that, and he will do that through sound. He will do that through the power of the heart and the will of the people asking to, even if they were believing or not, but they were intuitively asking for that type of divine intervention, and God took all of them up. So this was my first book with an idea from like 30 years ago, and it was kind of premonition, because I think right now we are going through this process.
Right.
How cool it is for you to sing, or not sing, play a crystal didgeridoo. I'm very interested to find out.
I have one here. I don't know if you want to see it.
Oh,
but
yes, it's possible.
you want me to
Yeah,
grab
please,
it?
please, yes.
Okay. You won't see the whole thing. It's kind of big, but
Wow, cool. Yeah, flower of life, yes. Nice. I heard you play both types, the wooden one and the crystal. How
yeah.
do you find the difference in sound?
Well, so I've been playing. I was first introduced to the didgeridoo when I was in Arizona in 1992, right after my near-death experience. And it became like my everything. I was like, nothing makes sense but that sound, and I'm just going to play that thing as much as I can. It was my grounding rod. And now I understand why it took some time to integrate. But I was playing the agave ones, so they were made by a local man. He was one of the first, probably the first didgeridoo maker in the United States, Alan Shockley. He passed a couple of years ago, but became my dear friend and mentor. And they were made out of, didgeridoos can be made out of anything. The traditional ones are made out of eucalyptus, and they were carved out by termites. But I think didgeridoos, no one I knew, I had never seen a didgeridoo in 1992. And now they're just everywhere. Didgeridoo is a household word. And so I think the termites can't eat fast enough to supply all the eucalyptus ones from Australia. So people are making them out of clay, out of bamboo, different kinds of hardwoods. And so the agave ones I liked because my style I think when we play the didgeridoo, it's really one note, and it's your breath and your spirit. And in every culture except English, the word for breath and the word for spirit is the same word. So, and it's interesting, I moved to Hawaii to study acupuncture, and then I learned about some of their language. This was in 1995. And they call us white people haole, but it's really haole. Ha is the breath, and ole means without. So it's kind of a derogatory term. But we did, they're a illegally occupied territory, the Hawaiian Islands. So they are not happy with a lot of us, people. But that's happened all over, Native Americans and the Aboriginals and stuff. But I realized when I started playing the didgeridoo that I wasn't, I did not know how to breathe. And I realized I'm a very shallow breather. And now I've come to understand that that's just the way we all are. It's like our culture, though, at least in America, but not the indigenous people, like, the aloha means in the spirit of the breath of life. That's how they lived. And but we're so shallow. And so as I started to learn, open my chakras by playing, especially the throat chakra, which opened my third ear, I call it, to hear higher sounds. The whole chakra system is affected by playing the didgeridoo. But my personal style, because as I was saying, your breath is you incarnated. So that's your link to your personal vibration. So when you play the didge, which is one note, I mean, I'm trained in classical piano for years, went to music school, everything. But you're reading music, and it's complex and you're using your brain and you have to get training and silver flute and all that. But the didge is like, you could say it's a musical instrument, but really I consider it an amplification of your spirit in a way that you can hear it. And it's a biofeedback tool for hearing how well your spirit is moving through the vehicle of your body. And that's why over time the sound gets clearer, it gets more refined, the use of your breath gets more. It's the ultimate pranayama, which is the basis of all the Vedic and yogic teachings. Is how you use your breath, how you can modify it to do many things, including accelerate your spiritual evolution. So when from the beginning, since it came out of a near death experience that I got interested, just synchronicity, the way it came in my life and everything, and me learning to play it was, I must have a parallel or past life with these people, the Aboriginals, oldest living culture on the planet, and the stewards of the planet, very deeply spiritually rooted culture. I always like to focus in on the harmonics because to me, there's the fundamental tone, which is based on the length and the diameter. It's just, there's physics to that. And then on top of the fundamental tone, there's an infinite number of harmonics, and I had, in high school, I had studied philosophy. I've been a philosopher my whole life. I always loved, that was my favorite class. I had a great, um, advanced philosophy teacher that really imprinted me in high school. And one of the things that I learned was Socrates and Plato and this whole lineage of Hermetic teachings that I feel I'm part of this lineage. Socrates said that, and Plato, Pythagoras, these people, they said, if you study the monochord, you'll discover the secrets of creation. And I had this dream shortly after the Didge came into my life, and that phase came back from high school. Now I'm in college, or I just was graduating, and I was like, the didgeridoo is a monochord. And the monochord is one note, and in the models that the Pythagoreans were using was like one string, like a fret, like a guitar has frets, and there's just one string with two, and how long the string is going to determine the note. But it doesn't really matter what note it is. The fact that it's one note, could be A, could be B, C, any note in the whole infinite scale. Mm. But as soon as you start to divide it, then you've got music, then you've got harmonics. So the fundamental tone is a monochord, and that's what didgeridoo is. It's like one note. But it's played with your breath instead of a string. It's got, this is one fret, and this is the other, and what goes between it is your breath. So it's a monochord of your spirit, which is, oh my God, like there's nothing more profound because, if you study the monochord and will teach you the secrets of creation. Well, here you are in school, studying the monochord of your own personal spirit, and you can hear audibly. And I can't say enough about this as a self-healing tool. It's taught me so many things, and I feel that the sound that it connects you to is that Aum that the Vedics talked about, the Om, the Aum. It is that sound, and it's the sound that since July 4th, 2014, I hear constantly. I mean, it got triggered by an event with this Indian man I was working with, and we were doing an exchange. That's underlying the sound of creation that the series is. You can, at some point, you'll start to perceive the sound, or you call it the background radiation, they say in modern physics. There's a vibration underlying everything. And I think one of the ways to tap into it is through playing the didgeridoo, because the monochord is the aum. It's the sound of creation that's going all the time, and it's out of which the matrix of this reality, the hologram of this world, emerges. And this hologram is much more fluid than we've been taught. And that's why the importance of remembering the power we have individually and collectively as creators. This is much more fluid reality, and that if we can remember these simple teachings that were the Hermetic lineage, and using these simple tools, and to me the didgeridoo is just a teacher. And so it's a long answer to your question, but when I play the wooden one, it's like I always was going for the harmonics. So you got the fundamental, and then you got the harmonics. And in the harmonics, there's so much going on. And I think of the body as like the fundamental tone. And then all your koshas, your subtle bodies, are like the harmonics of you, our emotional body, mental body, etheric body, astral body. There's all these layers that have been outlined and documented by a number of esoteric cultures that track and know how to quantify them. Even there's whole science of the subtle bodies. To me, those are the harmonics. So as you're playing and you're learning how to use the breath and tune into the universal aum, open up your chakras, moves, it's like a shushumna. I also think of this as like the shushumna, right? This is your central channel, your spine. And then the Ida and Pingala, like the Hermes rod with the two snakes, that's your two channels that are your kundalini, that you learn how to move through your body, and ultimately master that, and so that you can explore the higher realms, and eventually at death or before, you can graduate up through the central channel to the higher worlds. And so the crystal, when I developed this, the first models were made. I was touring with Crystal Tones and Dr. Weil. He was doing his spontaneous healing tour, and I had been working with him. We did some productions together, and he asked me to do the music for his tour of this new book, Spontaneous Healing, which is an amazing study of spontaneous remission of end-stage cancer of multiple people, and the miracle of that and how that came about. But I was touring with him and Crystal Tones, and at that time I was playing the agave didges and the crystal bowls. And Crystal Tones make these crystal bowls that I've been using for 30 years. And so we just started working on a model of a crystal didgeridoo to play with the crystal bowls. And then they standardized one based on the measurements of my wooden ones. And then I went off and developed one, because there was a place locally that could make these I tried them out of glass or Pyrex, and they don't sound the same. The crystal has a much longer resonance. Like if you hit it, it kind of has that ring. And so when you play it, it has much more resonance because it's crystal, and thousands of degrees temperature to make these versus the glass ones, the Pyrex. But I like a really small mouthpiece. So I went and I had, and the ones that Tones were making, they were making like a big mouthpiece, because most people like a big mouthpiece. But I can't get the harmonics that I'm looking for if the mouthpiece is too big. And then so I just designed, some engravings and stuff. And I have a few different models that I made locally. But that's the progression of it. And now it's kind of my favorite form. I do play my medicine pipe, which is still, it's a spiral long agave one. That's my favorite agave pipe. But the quartz has so much more ability to, in the style that I personally play, that it's tuning into those harmonics. And there's so much more that you can do if you have not only the vocalizations and the tongue placement, but the harmonics on top of it. Like have you heard the Tuvan throat singers?
No.
They're from Tuva, and they do this overtone singing with their mouth.
Mm,
It sounds like, a hum, and then there's this whistle playing on top of it. It's based on the placement of the tongue. And so it's kind of like the didgeridoos is kind of similar to what they're doing, but it's being amplified by the megaphone of the pipe. And so
okay.
there's just so much more diversity in what you can do with the sounds there.
Mm. Kima, you mentioned the Om sound, and I know in Kriya Yoga there is a technique where you can, in time, hear this sound. There are any other techniques which you mentioned that are in episode 9 and 10 that you encountered during your research?
To be able to perceive the
The
sound.
Om sound, yes.
Um, I did not go into that because, I mean, if we do a season 2, I would like to go into that much more deeply, because in all the years that I've been studying sound, to me, this has become the most fascinating, because I think that if you're on the path of a musician, but using it for spiritual context, not for performance, not for per se money or status or anything, just music as a discipline, a spiritual discipline, it'll get you eventually. All these paths lead to the same
Mm,
goal, which is some aspect of the sound current and how to merge back into it. And there are many techniques for that. And we did not go into them because they didn't want, when I was working with, the team, and like, because, they want it to be not too esoteric when at least the first season, because you need to build a foundation, and there's just so much foundation to be built, and you have so much, a 30-minute episode to cover this vast topic, whether it's the building of the megaliths, or the harmony of the spheres and the planetary sounds, or used for healing. Each episode had, but I really wanted to do a whole lot more on how to perceive the sound, the techniques. But it's probably a little preliminary to do. I believe that, from my own personal experience, I have found some books, there's not many, that teach how to work with the sound and how to learn to perceive it. Um, and I could, if you want, we can list them in the interview, some of the best books that are, I mean, it took me, it wasn't just like easy to find this, but a couple of them were like, this is so incredibly helpful. And it's a little hard to explain because it's a lot
mm,
in bringing you on this road. But, there's a few chapters in this one particular book that's probably the most useful I've found, as far as how to perceive it and then what to do with it. Because that's the even more, because a lot of people are starting to perceive the sound of creation spontaneously. And then, of course, our culture and many cultures at this time, they'll pathologize any signs of spiritual awakening. So, it's discounted, or it's medicated, or it's put in a box with a diagnosis. And I think a lot of what we call tinnitus or tinnitus that are happening more, like, I mean, it could be like if you're in a war, or some bomb goes off in your ear next to you, and then all of a sudden you're hearing this sound. That's just because it damaged something, I don't know, that's one thing. But if you start to spontaneously hear it, as I did, on a deeply seeking spiritual path, and associated with a deep meditation with a man from India who knows about the sound current, which I had no clue about. I didn't even know what it was when this happened. And that's a different context. And if it gets triggered, even in that context, most people wouldn't know what to do. Even like me, who has been a seeker since my near death, I mean, it was a little disturbing, because I was like, I can't think about anything else than this sound happening. And it was up. And I mean, I knew it was something important, but I had no tools to deal with it. And so that's, I think, more than teaching people how to hear it, I sense that because we're in a time of a frequency shift, that part is going to be not as crucial as what do you do when you start to hear it. Because a lot of people, if you just instruct them to just go into a meditative state and listen, and they're in a quiet room, and they know how to get in, out of their mind and drop into their heart and just breathe, they'll start hearing it. The thing is, it may not get triggered to be able to hear it all the time, which is one of the techniques, and one of the uses for it is to learn how to remain constantly connected to the sound, eventually, even while you're sleeping, which is a very advanced level. I only did that once. And I'm still working on lucid dreaming, and that doesn't happen that much. I don't know if I've got pineal gland calcification, but you know, being conscious in your dreams is really important for spiritual evolution. It's really helpful. And so being aware of the sound current, it's hard enough once you start hearing it to hear it while you're talking to someone, while you're eating, while you're working, while you're doing dishes, while you're whatever, all day. Because what it's doing is in training your consciousness to a frequency of your higher self, which ultimately your higher self is an an overtone or a harmonic of the creator, because everything is a fractal of the one creator. Brahma, they call it. In the Nada, Brahma means the world is sound. The world, Brahma, is the world, and Nada is the sound. And that's like this Vedic, thousands of years old tradition of like describing the universe. It's Brahma. It's like a body, and we are a fractal of that. We're probably like, our whole planet is probably a cell in the body of Brahma, or an electron. I mean, that's how vast it is, but it doesn't matter. It's all holographic. So it doesn't mean, it means it's the same pattern on infinitely repeating scale. So you are Brahma and I am Brahma, and everybody is the one universe, because it's a holographic. And if we study, that should be the new science of teaching kids: fractals, chaos, holographic reality. This is how the universe works. And it means we're everything and we're nothing at the same time. It's very humbling, but if you get caught up in the I am God thing, then you're missing the point, which is a danger on the spiritual path. People start to realize their spiritual power, but they forget that everyone is that too. Everyone.
Yes.
And that, if you remember that, you can't get full of yourself because you're no better than anyone else. That's what I think the age of Aquarius is. We, the people, we recognize we're all cells in the body of a larger being. And let's start to act that way. We're going to have so much more fun than this game of pretending you're less than or better than someone else, or competing with them, or, it's just such a boring old game. The competition, separation mindset that I think a lot of people like myself are just kind of over it, and we want new lessons. And that's my goal, is to just be the change, be that frequency, and each one of us that holds that frequency of consciousness without judging, without pushing away or grasping onto. That's the Buddhist teaching, right? It's just that middle place of like, I am creator, we're all creator. Let's remember that and build a beautiful world.
Yeah, Kimba, thank you. Words of wisdom. And for people who want to get more into your work and your music and workshops, they can visit your website, correct?
Yeah, that'd probably be the best way. Yeah.
Perfect. And thank you very much for being with me today. I really enjoyed the conversation. And I will finish the Sound of Creation series for sure. And I will promote it as much as possible, because people will learn from it. I can vouch. So they will learn from it for sure.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to connect with you and to share with you. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And to my guests, thank you. My viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, like it. Get a free copy of my book when you visit my website. Promote me, support me on patreon.com. And until next time, love and gratitude.